Hello, my name is Junaid and I am a filmmaker. Since January of 2014, I have made over 20 short films and videos, and I would like to share the story of my journey with you. So I started college with no clear idea of what I wanted to study. I knew I loved movies, and I was curious about how they were made, but I never considered that I would eventually try to make them. One day, after performing on stage at a small theater event on campus, I was approached by a student called Alex Hertz to star in a film that he was trying to make. I said yes. During the several months that we spent shooting this film, I observed Alex work as a one-man crew, and by the time we were done, I was inspired to go out and try to make my own films. The first film I ever made, I directed with my friend Eric Chalif. We called it Is That Poop? It's a joke about two friends who stumble upon something that looks like a pile of poop while they're walking, and they decide to investigate it to be sure about what it actually is. The second film I made was called Dig It Deep. It's a story about a guy involved in a prank gone wrong who tries to hide the two dead bodies in his room. I made it as a final project for a filmmaking class, and I was highly encouraged by the positive reception it got when it was screened on campus, and I was eager to go out and make more films. Film director Robert Rodriguez, in his book Rebel Without a Crew, says that every filmmaker has several bad films in them that they need to get out of the way before they can start making good films. I realized that while on campus taking a full course load, I simply would not have enough time to build my filmmaking experience through practice. So at the end of my sophomore year, I decided to take a year off from the college and go back home to Ghana, where I would have the free time to make as many bad films as I needed to make to become good. That summer, the summer of 2014, I bought a camera, a tripod, and a microphone in preparation for the films that I would make once I returned home. To get my feet wet, I spent that summer on campus making a few projects. I made a video called Assassination. It was a short video that showed one afternoon in the lives of me and my friends during the break before summer term began. I also made Power. It was a short film about bullying. Then I made $500, a short film about a desperate young man in debt who calls on his friends and family to help him settle it. I made Lunch. It was an experimental short film about a guy eating his lunch. I made Stolen Bike, a short video about a guy who loses his friend's bike. In October 2014, I flew back home to Ghana and dived headfirst into my filmmaking adventure. Within the first 5 weeks of my return, I made 5 short films. I wrote, directed, and edited each of those films within the week of their release. In week 1, I made Sister Good Evening. It was a short film about a young girl who gets tricked and loses a bicycle to 2 thieves. In week 2, I made A Little Cement. It was a story about 2 children who get caught trespassing on an ill-tempered man's work site. In week 3, I made Tiny Boy Off to School, a story about a young boy on his last day at home before he leaves for boarding school. In week 4, I made A Latecomer's Problem. It's a family story about a young girl who runs away from school and her brother who gets fired from work. They bond and grow closer as they spend their day together at home. In week 5, I made A Calamity, a story about a young married woman who is inconvenienced by her husband's friend, who is in love with her and tries to persuade her to leave her marriage for him. I had come a long way those 5 weeks. I could see big improvements in my screenwriting, my directing, and my editing. Also, my friends were a highly supportive audience who gave great feedback on each project I released. And I won the support of my mother, who had initially been opposed to my decision to pursue filmmaking. I was highly confident in my potential to grow. I believe that if I took enough time to write a script and build a cast and crew, I could make a much bigger and better film. The next project I was going to work on would be a feature film. It was an adaptation of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa's 1950 film Rashomon. I titled it Under the Shed. I had watched many of Kurosawa's films, and I believed that adapting one of them would be a great learning experience. I chose Rashomon because it had a few locations and a small cast that I could see myself easily acquiring. So I wrote my script, built a cast and crew comprising of friends and family, and scouted and got permissions for all the locations I needed. We started filming in December of 2014. Each morning, I would draw out all the shots we had to film for the day, and that helped us make quick progress. We had filmed just over a quarter of the project before it fell apart. The main reason why the project fell apart was we didn't have the money to see it through. In the past, I had completed several short films on no budget with no problems. But when it came to this feature project, I realized that we could only go so far before everything came crumbling. Also, I failed to get my cast and crew as excited about the project as I was, and so they were not as committed. From this experience, I learned that filmmaking is as much about great communication and effective leadership as it is about telling a story with the camera. No matter how good your script is, nothing good will get made if the people you're working with do not care about the project. Also, storyboarding every shot for this project helped me to start viewing films as a sort of mosaic, with each shot being a piece of colored glass that can be designed strategically to fit with the others around it to tell a tight and effective story. My next project was a short film called The Robbery. It was a story about a young woman who gets robbed by a masked thief who is actually her boyfriend, trying to teach her a lesson about keeping her door locked at all times. Then I directed a video to illustrate a poem by famous Ghanaian poet Gombela the Poet. It was called Hajia Batoro, Will You Marry Me? The video performed well on social media, garnering over 22,000 views on Facebook video within a few days of being released. My time at home ended and I returned to college a much stronger filmmaker. The first film I made on my return was Start Over. It's a story about a college student who finds it hard to fit in and adjust to life in school because he refuses to face his problems. Then I made Bounce. It was a 2-minute short film with minimal dialogue about a guy and a girl who connect by bouncing the ball back and forth between each other. I made a fight scene called Junaid's Revenge. It didn't have much of a story to it. One of the guys is just trying to avenge his dead friend, but I was very happy with how the video turned out. And that brings me to my most recent film project, Lighter. It's a story about an extreme bet between two men. It is my biggest film project yet, and I look forward to releasing it. Of course, there are several other projects that I didn't get to mention, either because they were failed experiments, so I simply didn't have the time to mention them in this video. But this should be a good summary of my work so far. I would like to thank everybody who has invested in me on this journey in one way or another. My collaborators, my friends, my family, my viewers, and the many film teachers who have helped to expand my view on what films can be. I have a lot to learn and so much room to grow. And now that I am done with college, I look forward to doing so much more. Thank you for watching.